to the Carolina Weather Group. This is the Thursday, September 13th, 2018 edition of Hurricane Florence coverage. We're going to do a brief pause right here. We've been noticing that we need to get our Facebook page up and going, so we'll be with you in just a moment here to do our 9 o'clock show. Okay, so I've got the approval, so we're good to go. Welcome to our Thursday edition of the Carolina Weather Group. We continue our coverage tracking Hurricane Florence as Florence is approaching the Carolina coastline. Both North and South Carolina coastlines right now are getting hit pretty hard with the outer bands of Florence, especially up in the Morehead City and Outer Banks area. Down towards Wilmington, Myrtle Beach, starting the Philly effects, and then eventually down into the Charleston area. So tonight we have our regular panelists on, Shay Gibson in Charleston, South Carolina. We have Jared Smith, also in Charleston, South Carolina with us. We have Chris Jackson, who is in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina tonight, and James Brierton, who's up in Rochester, New York. And I'm Scotty Powell here in the foothills of North Carolina. So we welcome you to our program tonight. Please share this out to your friends and family in their timelines. That way they can get the latest information for what we're expecting over the next couple of days with Hurricane Florence. We also have with us tonight Daniel Bonds, meteorologist in Columbia, South Carolina, and Melissa Griffin, who is a climatologist with the state of South Carolina. And here in just a little bit, Dr. Greg Postel from the Weather Channel will be joining us as well. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to Jared Smith. And Jared, we had the 8 o'clock advisory come out just a little bit ago on Florence. And can you give us the up-to-date information on that?
Yep, absolutely, Scotty. Good evening, everybody. Hurricane Florence is slowing down. It's slowed down for much of the day today. And now we've got it hugging the coast at this point. So as of 8 o'clock, max sustained winds of 100 miles an hour. That's a Category 2 on the Saffir-Simpson wind scale. Movement northwest at 5 miles per hour. So again, it's been kind of meandering with this west, northwest movement throughout the day. Minimum pressure 955 millibars. It had a little flare up earlier. The winds briefly got up to 105, but now back down to 100. And so it's 85 miles east-southeast of Wilmington, 145 miles east of Chris Jackson in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So a couple changes that came out with the 5 o'clock update. We now have a tropical storm warning north of North Carolina to Cape Charles, Light, Virginia, Chesapeake Bay, south of New Point Comfort, and Edisto Beach, South Carolina to South Santee River, South Carolina. From there, there's also several inland tropical storm warnings that have been issued, including for Berkeley, Charleston, Dorchester counties and the Tri-County area, and really all the way up into the PD. So it's been kind of busy, to say the least. You're starting to see maybe some trends finally emerging here. If we take a look at the track, let me screen for you. Just a moment. Booyah. All right, there we go. And so we take a look at the track here again. Very, very wide wind field with Florence. Very, very wide storm. Hurricane force winds extend outward up to 80 miles from the center. Tropical storm force winds extend outward up to 195 miles from the center. This tropical storm force wind field is solidly onshore now in North Carolina. And again, this is just going to drift. It's going to drift west for a little bit. Might bend south slightly into the PD area and then drift through the Midlands and then gets picked up by trough and bye-bye. But in the meantime, just bad storm surge damage already in North Carolina. We're gonna talk all about that. And so, well, more to come from old Florence. Back to you, Scotty.
All right, thank you for the latest information there, Jared. I want to toss it. Shay, are you ready? Are you good?
Hold on. Scotty, come right back to me, and I'll give you more analysis on the modeling and everything like that, and we'll go into more detail about what's actually occurring with the storm at the moment. I also have some interesting surface ops to talk about. Come right back, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Shay is trying to get with with Greg Postel, trying to get him up on the stream. I want to toss it quickly. I'm kind of going out of the order here. we want to bring in Chris Jackson right quick. Chris, you've been traveling all day. You're actually getting to see some of the firsthand experiences of what's going on with Florence and Myrtle Beach. Kind of tell us about your day and what you've experienced so far.
Hey, Scotty. Left out of Columbia about just before noon today, and took the scenic route down here. Came through the town of Nichols. Went through the town of Nichols. That was, everybody knows, devastated by the 2016 floods associated with Hurricane Matthew. From there, came on down to North Myrtle Beach. Spent the afternoon in North Myrtle Beach. Talked with the local emergency officials there, and just helped them out. Sent them some wind readings off my instruments. And, went down to the beach and just got a feel for it. It was actually along the beach. It was a great day. The wave action was just incredible. I mean, like 3 and 4, 5-foot breakers with an offshore flow, just, had the waves just carved up nice. And there was a lot of people out surfing today. Don't want to encourage that because of the rip currents, but I understand, where the surfers are, and there's not a whole lot we can do about that. But, about 6 o'clock, decided to come down to Myrtle Beach and get a hotel for the night. Watching on radar, the storm just looks like it's stalled. It has not gotten any closer to me all day. So instead of roughing it out all night tonight in a parking garage or something like that, I decided to come on down to Myrtle Beach and found a hotel where a bunch of journalists and stuff are.
All right, that sounds good. Chris has got some great footage for us, and we'll air that here in just a little bit on the show. But I want to bring in Daniel Bonds. He works in Columbia, South Carolina for the Tegna affiliate, and Daniel's got to get back to work. So we want to go ahead and bring him in. Daniel, old friend to the show. It's nice to have you back. I hate it's under these circumstances, though.
Yeah, y'all can let me come anytime. I appreciate it. And I have to admit, I'm at the house now, so I'm not that busy. But I am tired, and my wife goes to bed so early because she has to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. So I didn't want to keep her up talking weather too late. But yeah, it's great to be here. I appreciate you guys letting me come back, and I appreciate the invitation from you and Chris, Scotty.
No problem, Daniel. So you've been busy today. At least one more day of maybe some preparations in the Columbia, South Carolina area before we kind of see the full effects of Florence. So what are you looking at right now for your forecast area? What have you been telling your people?
Yeah, the biggest thing today probably was, or I'd say one of the interesting things was, it was the first ever tropical storm warning for the Midlands, because y'all probably know the change in the warnings and with the high wind warnings. Now they can issue those inland tropical warnings. And so that was one of the interesting things. We had our first ever tropical storm warning for our area. That's the biggest thing we're watching. We've got 3 counties under a warning, another one under a watch. And it looks like that's going to be the greatest impact for us in our eastern part of our market. So that's what we've been watching. The chances are that, obviously, we heard Chris talking about Nichols. I think that's a big concern, is the river flooding for us across the Midlands, also the flash flooding as well. The wind probably in the eastern half of our DMA, but that's the biggest thing we're watching, the river flooding and for the potential for flash flooding. That's what we've been telling people all day long. And it looks like, honestly, we could use the rain in our area, but not that much. But over a 3-4 day period, it wouldn't be that bad for us to pick up a little bit of rain. But unfortunately, it looks like in the eastern part of our area, some higher amounts, which could cause some potential problems.
And Daniel, Columbia, no stranger to flooding. We saw that a couple of years ago with back in 2015, and even some flooding with Hurricane Matthew in 2016. I know we've been fielding a couple of questions this week. Is the flooding in Columbia going to be anything like it was the past couple of years? We see some higher totals, but it doesn't look like it's going to be as extreme. But what are you telling your folks there?
Yeah, and that's the litmus test now in Columbia, is the 2015 flood. And that was a short period. And if we get the type of rain, if we get 7 to 10 inches in the Columbia area, and it comes in waves and those bands that you would expect, it's probably not going to be that big of a deal. It's going to be some flash flooding, obviously, but it's not going to be anything like the 2015 floods. I mean, the 2015 floods was just crazy. And then you had the dams breaching, and it was like dominoes. So don't think it'll be like that, but that's the litmus test. That we've gotten that question, and we've gotten, is this thing going to be anything like Hugo from '89? And that's another one of the litmus tests for South Carolina, is they want to know what it compares to Hugo. And it's two different storms, so you really can't compare those two. But that's what freaks people out, for lack of better words.
Definitely. So we've had that Hugo question the past couple of nights. Another threat that you guys may face as Florence tracks inland is the potential for tornadoes, and the track kind of depended on that. Looks like maybe the way the track is right now, you guys may be setting up for that potential.
Yeah, and it all depends on that track. Where is that center of rotation? Are we in that right front quadrant? And how long will we be in it? Right now, we were saying maybe isolated tornadoes, but that can change depending on the track. So that was what we were kind of looking at as far as severe weather was concerned today. Obviously, we'll know a whole lot more. Well, I shouldn't say obviously. Hopefully, we'll know a lot more tomorrow, and certainly as we go into Saturday. But that was the big thing we've been watching, is the river flooding and the flash flooding potential.
Definitely so. And I know it's been a complicated forecast. Just a couple of days ago, it was expected to maybe move up into Virginia and maybe even not affect the upstate of South Carolina or even you. Communication standpoint, what's it been like for you guys? I know it's been all over the place, per se, back and forth. Has it been hard for you guys to kind of convince people, hey, this could be a serious situation we need to worry about?
I think people are taking it pretty serious. I believe, and I think sometimes the messages are mixed. When a lot of people hear evacuation, they think that us here in the Central Midlands they need to evacuate. And so we've had to kind of stress, you don't have to evacuate, but if you live in a floodplain or you live in an area that gets a river flood warning, then yeah, you may need to evacuate. But we get a lot of questions about evacuations and we try to tell them, run from the water, hide from the wind, as a lot of people say. But we get a lot of that. We get people asking if they should go to work on Friday or Saturday. And we have to tell them, like, we can't make that judgment for you, but you make the best decision that's going to keep you safe. So we get a ton of questions. Social media is good and bad. There's a lot of stuff out there that we've seen that just, y'all see it too. Somebody pulls one model run and takes it as the biblical truth there. And then that's some of the things that we're fighting through too. Because people are saying, well, XYZ is saying this and you guys are saying that. And then they always say, well, the European model is the more accurate. And we say, well, are any of them really that accurate? They give us an idea of what may happen. So we run into that kind of stuff with communication. Social media is great, but we do get some of those issues.
It has a really good upside and a really bad downside to it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we know you're tired. So last question for you, and feel free to stick around if you want to, Daniel.
Yeah.
As you were at work today, you doing some of your TV hits and stuff like that. What has been your final word to your folks there in the Columbia and your viewing area?
The biggest thing I like to tell people for anything is be prepared, but you don't necessarily have to be paranoid. If you're prepared, you'll be ready for whatever may come. And hopefully our viewers are ready for whatever may come, and they're not paranoid or scared of the event. And you going back to your last question, you're talking about social media. That has become such a big part of what we do. TV has become just a small part. We'll do a 2-minute hit, an update on the hour about the storm, but then we'll go an additional 15 minutes on Facebook Live or YouTube Live or whatever that format may be, answering questions like that. And I think that's how things have changed, especially here over the last couple. It's been a lot more social media focus. Again, like you said, Scotty, can be good and bad.
It is, and we personally like this format. I'm monitoring the phone, watching questions pop in like everybody else, but it kind of that one-on-one feeling in it. And that's the good side. The bad side is those social meteorologists that we have to, all those crazy fantasy storms. So
yeah, my favorite this week was that Florence was picking up sharks. and bringing them into the storm. That was my favorite by far.
That's right. That's right. Well, Daniel, we appreciate it. Stick around. I'm going to toss it to Shay Gibson. And Shay, I know you guys at WeatherFlow, you were able to capture some really great data off the coast of North Carolina. Then I'll let you bring in our next guest.
All right. Thank you very much, Scotty. Yeah, it took me a few minutes there. I was responding to several things at one time, but make sure, give me an okay. You can see the screen that I'm showing you.
We got it.
Okay, good deal. All right. So this is our Datascope Storm Track Viewer, and you can see this in Wind Alert as well. windalert.com/storm/Florence, pretty easy link. You go in, you can see all of our weather stations going on here. And what we're seeing is a lot of observations where we're verifying some gust into the Category 2 strength. We have the Onslow Outer Bay buoy reading at 110 miles per hour. And so we are getting some severe winds up in this area. Here, our Fort Macon station, just next to Cape Lookout. We look at the archive. We had a gust to 105 miles per hour at 8:23 p.m. Now, this station is 34 feet high above the ground. So this is an optimal height of just near 10 meters, which is optimal. And so the winds right now are sustained at 65 to 67 miles per hour, up near 70 miles per hour. So this is strong tropical storm sustained force winds with gusting up over 100 miles per hour. So this is pretty serious. Everything is going downhill very quickly for southeastern North Carolina. I imagine the surge is going up as well. I saw some social media on Twitter just before sunset where folks up in New Bern, that's in western Pimlico, up in the Neuse, and those areas are starting to flood out pretty badly. That was expected with a storm surge of about 9 feet plus for some of those spots. It went down a little bit because the intensity of the storm went down. But we did see one last ditch effort with convection really wrapping around the core rapidly about an hour and a half ago as the storm moved over the Gulf Stream. And we might be seeing right now the cloud tops are cooling. We could be seeing that cool water upwelling effect that we've been talking about as well as the storm moves along the coast. Pull up COD imagery here, and we can catch the back end of this flare-up of convection right here in the first frames. And then as we get a little further out, we see the cloud tops cooling. This could be in where this cool water upwelling effect is starting to take away some of the surface fueling of the storm. Also, we have a little bit of dry air slotting getting involved with it as well on the western side. So we're seeing a weakening process, just as NSC has pretty much suspected that that's what happened as it closed in on the coastline. Some of the modeling real quick, I don't want to spend too much, but there is some disagreement here. We have the Euro, which keeps this hugged along the coastline, maybe even offshore. And we have the GFS and the NAM and some other models, pretty much the UCMET. There's three major model sources that are keeping this thing to the west inland. But the Euro has been this one that has been consistently, modeling this whole scenario where the storm, more members are dropping it a little bit southwest along the coast. So it can't be ignored, and which is why the NHC track projection is still so wide, and the margin of error keeps it off the coastline. Otherwise, this track would be pushing straight into South Carolina at this point, or even portions of southeastern North Carolina all the way across. And so it's just still confusing. There's still some uncertainty because of the Euro. And I think we're going to find out what the Euro is, their margin of error throughout this whole thing is going to be when the storm is over. I know that I saw a graph the other day where it actually outled the other models as being more erroneous in some of its numbers. So we'll see what's going on there. Back to you, Scotty, unless there's any other questions about modeling. Basically, for those watching, in a nutshell, what's causing this is high pressure to the north and northeast wedge biting down to the storm. The gradient that's creating itself on the northern side is also helping to push it down a little further to the west-southwest in time, and then across the state and around the subtropical ridge that's going to be developing with a trough picking it up as well. So luckily, hopefully by the time we get to Monday, we'll start to see this system move out of the southeast region, and we'll be on our way out from it.
Shay, did you want to talk about maybe some of the observations that you guys at WeatherFlow were able to capture, and then I'll let you bring in our guest.
Sure. Yeah. So the again, the observation I showed with the Datascope Storm Track right here in our Storm Track tool, the observations we're seeing basically are sustained tropical storm force winds for the most part. We're getting sustained hurricane force winds here at Davis, North Carolina. So some of these spots are getting sustained hurricane force winds for sure. These buoy readings around the storm, with the swell heights being so large, we have to account for surface friction and but swell shadowing. Some of the science behind winds where you get swell heights so large that you get a buoy that's bouncing up and down in the waves, and you're not getting the cleanest readings. So We haven't really accounted for the peak wind speeds on top of what you're seeing here for averages, but we can certainly know that it's several knots, if not maybe 10 to 20 knots higher than possibly what we're seeing here as far as the averages go. So definitely seeing hurricane force winds along the southeast North Carolina area is expected. I'm going to go ahead and bring Greg Postel from the Weather Channel in and see what he has to say and what he's been seeing from his point of view, and the rest of his staff up there. They do a great job. So Greg, I'm going to go ahead and bring you to the forefront here and let us know what you're seeing. Oh no, Greg, can you hear me? Not sure if he's hearing me, guys. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know.
Let me let's go over to or Scotty, you can pick it up wherever you want.
I'll definitely. Yeah, we'll pick it up here. You gotta love technology, right? So talking about this storm, Chris, I want to come to you right quick. You're noticing it how quiet it was in Myrtle Beach. Talk to us about how those folks there have evacuated. I mean, some of the video, and I think we've finally got that video ready to roll. It was almost like a ghost town there.
Oh, absolutely, Scott. It was, it looks like a lot of people along the coast have heeded, the warning that was given out and the evacuation warning on Tuesday by Governor Master, and a lot of the buildings are boarded up. Most everything's closed down. It was weird to be down here, Myrtle Beach in the late season, but there's nobody else here. I drove from Cherry Grove down here to the south side, close to the airport, just a little while ago, and I maybe saw 3 other cars, and I think 2 of them were Myrtle Beach PD. So I mean, it is absolutely a ghost town.
And Chris and Daniel, I may bring you into this, and Melissa as well. We were able to see the road reversal. I know it was contraflow all the way out of the coastal areas, and then today it seemed like we are allowed to go back into those areas. Am I correct in saying that? Me being in North Carolina, I was just observing from afar. So
no, they actually they did the road reversal so that emergency services can get down there a lot quicker. Okay. It's not that they have stopped the evacuation order and they're letting people back in. That's more of for emergency management operations at this point. The road reversal was meant to get as many people out quickly ahead of the storm as possible. And in doing that road reversal, now they can actually get emergency services back down to the coast a lot quicker after the event actually happens.
I was catching on Twitter. They said at like 6:30, 7 o'clock tonight that the roads had been reversed. I didn't know what, if they were allowing people now to go back or not. So, but anyways, that's some good information. But Chris, glad to see that a lot of folks have taken that advice and have moved out of the area.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. Everybody gets so bent out of shape when you see, Cat 2, Cat 3 hurricane, you talk about winds over 100 miles an hour, but the biggest threats is not the wind. It's the water. It's the storm surge. It's the inland flood and flash flooding. That's the number one killer. And, I'm really glad people heeded the warning, and at least in the Grand Strand area that I've seen have got out of town.
And Jared, I know I'm not sure if we got Greg yet. Jared, you noted that there was some additional tropical storm warnings issued for you guys close to Charleston and south. How have those preparations went? Have people kind of maybe have their ears up a little bit more and paying more attention?
I was out and about today, and there was still, a decent amount of cars. Everything's closed. The way they get people to evacuate is close Taco Bell, right? Everything is closed. It's, there's very few things open. Publix is still open, but there's a lot of people behind. There's the tropical storm really doesn't scare a lot of people. I think some of it is people feel a little hardened after the last 2. Matthew and Irma. I think people are going to see a little bit more wind out of this, and I think they're going to see rains that maybe, especially further up, they're not going to expect. Again, we're thinking up to 10 inches of rain here and maybe a little bit more in isolated spots. You never know. So flash flood watch is up too. But it's quieter. It's certainly quieter. But just anecdotally from my neighborhood, I don't think I've seen anybody leave. So I'm not sure what the compliance is with the evacuation order here is in Charleston.
Okay, thank you for that, Jared. Let's bring in Melissa here. Melissa, as a climatologist, what are you kind of studying? What are you kind of looking at as we look at Florence moving into the area?
Well, one of the things that I've been looking at is the past rainfall from the 2015 floods and, of course, Matthew. They had substantial flooding along the PD. And you guys were kind enough to share one of the tweets that I had put out a little bit earlier that showed the river basins where the PD and the Catawba, the Santee watersheds, they actually get their headwaters starting in North Carolina. So all of that water is going to be coming into those watersheds and eventually making its way down through South Carolina. And it comes down to how much can those watersheds actually handle. The PD is a really big watershed. It's known as like a black water watershed, which means that it's a very slow moving watershed. It doesn't have the quick flash flood where you get the quick rises and the quick retreats of water. So what we're going to actually see is the skies are going to clear, the rain's going to stop, and the river water is going to continue to rise. So we're kind of monitoring that and taking a look at the 2015, the Matthew floods, and what could we potentially see from those river basins from this amount of rain that we're going to get from Florence.
It's amazing to see. We talked about that with Daniel here, and he talked about it kind of being like the benchmark storm for a lot of folks. I don't know what it's been about South Carolina, but over the past 4 or 5 years, there's been some major rainfall events that's taken place there. And I know that's kind of kept you guys busy.
It has definitely kept us busy. I mean, in the Climate Center, we've been analyzing the 2015 flood, still looking at the stuff from Matthew. I mean, we're still trying to recover from those two particular events. And here we're going to go into another event where we're going to have to do a lot of analysis of data. I mean, we're actually looking I don't know if you guys saw the tweet that came out of the Southeast Regional Climate Center just earlier today, but they were actually kind enough to post the one-day record rainfall amounts for North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. In North Carolina, it's going to be in Brunswick County. It was 18.3 inches back on September 16th, 1999 in Hurricane Floyd. And the one-day total or maximum total in South Carolina is also from Hurricane Floyd. It's the September 16th, 1999, and that was 14.8. We're actually, depending on how these rain rates set up and where these bands set up, I mean, we actually could look at like smashing those records for statewide rainfall total. So that's something else that we're watching too.
And so experiencing those two floods, I'm sure you guys have learned some things coming into this event. Are you able to put some of that into place before we see the effects of Florence in the Midlands? And I know you just don't cover the Columbia area, but that's kind of the biggest area that we've seen a lot of rain.
Well, I mean, the one thing is that we're gonna be going out and doing analysis on regardless of where the rain falls and looking at those historical perspectives and putting them in perspective to 2015, to what happened to Matthew, to what happened now. So I mean, it's kind of interesting. I'm coming into this fairly brand new to Florida, very brand new to South Carolina from Florida. But I mean, if you look back at the rainfall and the forecast that they had for Harvey, and people were just disbelieving that we could get that much rain. In 2008, I lived through Tropical Storm Floyd in Tallahassee, and we measured 30 inches of rain in 3 days. And that was another one of those ones where you just looked at the models and what they were putting out on, just not really believing that much rain could fall. So, I mean, we're going to be looking at this, and we're going to be looking to see what are the changes in the rainfall across, not just South Carolina, but North Carolina too, since it does have such a significant impact on our river system.
Here's a question we just got in from a viewer. Stephen Thayer is wanting to know, does these hurricanes or these back-to-back rainfall events, do they have kind of any influence on what we may see this winter? And I know that's kind of a hard question, but do we see any similarities in these events?
I could not even begin to answer that question without doing a really good deal of research. I mean, typically we look towards like the El Nino. El Nino usually gives us a really good signal of what's going to be happening in the upcoming winter. And they, earlier in the summer, they were saying the El Nino was looking more apparent, like it was going to happen. And now if you actually look at the forecast from this Climate Prediction Center, they're actually backing off on their El Nino forecast a little bit. So I can't really say that one leads to another at this point, but it's definitely something to take a look at in the future.
And so with this, there's been a lot of talk about the tides and stuff that's coming in the Charleston area and that's leading to flooding. What has your studies found that? I mean, with the tides, even with this tropical moisture coming in, the Charleston area and places like that, they're seeing a little bit more extreme flooding than maybe others.
Well, they are seeing it's weird, especially in Charleston, and Jared could probably attest to this because he's boots on the ground there. But you have like three different types of flooding. You have your saltwater flooding just from your tidal range. You have your freshwater flooding when you get a significant downpour downtown. And then you get the combination of both when you have a high tide and then you get that extreme amount of rainfall. And that just makes it even worse in the Charleston area. So there's these different components that actually go into the flooding of the Charleston area. One of the things that we do notice, especially when you have a storm surge that's pushing onshore, you'll get that push up into the bay or into the harbor. You'll get the push up into the rivers, and then you have the water coming down the river system that meets. And so you get that initial surge up, and then it starts to retreat, and then you get the water that comes down as well. So you kind of, you'll see that a collection too sometimes in the harbor. It's not as it may not be as impactful in the harbor that way as it is in some of the river systems. But like I said, it's the tides, the rain, and then the combination of the both that can get you in Charleston.
Yeah, definitely so. And Jared, you can attest to that. James, I'm going to toss it to you right quick. I'm going to kind of scroll through some of these reports that are coming in because I hear a lot of beeping going on in my ears. I'll kind of let you reset things for us for a little bit.
Sure, absolutely, Scotty. It is September the 13th, 2018. You're watching special coverage of Hurricane Florence from the Carolina Weather Group. I am James Brierton, as Scotty said, and we are continuing a conversation. It is about 9:40 p.m. Eastern Time, and we've been live with you throughout the day, bringing you live coverage as news conferences and updates came in. You've been seeing on our feeds the governors of both North Carolina and South Carolina, Roy Cooper and Henry McMaster, and other local officials as well, too. As they were bringing their updates to us, we were turning around and bringing them to you. If you're looking for anything hyper local, you can always play those back on our Facebook page or on our YouTube page. Matter of fact, our YouTube page at this point is staying live 24 hours a day with the latest information, latest satellite imagery. And of course, you're able to see on the side of the screen there where we are scrolling for you some of the latest information. Matter of fact, I believe Shay Gibson actually has pinned up on the screen right now his weather flow system. And you can see not only some of the latest buoy information coming in, but you can also see the storm track. We talk a lot about models, but what you see there on blue on Shay's screen that he has up for us is the official National Hurricane Center forecast. And then you can see that black line. That black line is only the center. It is not something we should live or die by. It is not the gospel of where this storm is going to go. We don't know exactly where it's going to go. It's that margin of error that's the blue. So anyone right now from Fort Bragg as far south as Charleston, South Carolina, you are inside this cone. But what Shay is, I think, pointing out to us right now is not only the wave heights that we're seeing, the increasing swell from this storm, but it looks like he's got gusts there of about 110 miles an hour, sustained winds of 51 miles an hour. At the last advisory we had from the National Hurricane Center, Scotty, we had 100-mile-per-hour wind sustained, Category 2 storm, and this storm only moving northwest at 5 miles an hour. Now, the forecast has changed a lot in the last few days, but you can see that since about this time yesterday, we've been keeping kind of this hook where it's going to kind of hug the shore a little bit, maybe make landfall somewhere near Wilmington, although you can see we have a very large margin of error there in that blue cone that Shay has up on the screen. So when and if the center of circulation of Florence makes landfall, it could be anywhere from just north of Wilmington to as far south as Charleston. Let me take this opportunity, if I may, and bring back in Jared Smith, who is in Charleston, South Carolina. He has already admitted to us that he has not followed the coastal evacuation. Jared, will that change if this eye comes further south?
Well, if this eye comes further south, then I'm just going to book it to my parents' house. They have a nice little generator and just going to hunker down. It's just going to be lots of dogs running around, and it'll be fun. But and then I'm going to get you some great B-roll, James, so don't worry about that. But yeah, so just quickly recapping what we've got going on with the with the Hurricane Center advisory. Again, it's moving slowly, as James said. Northwest at 5. That's not much of a motion there, and it's just lashing southeast North Carolina with storm surge and strong winds. Max sustained winds of 100 miles an hour, pressure at 955. My satellite crashed over here. I wanted to see how I could get a look at that, but it crashed, as AWIPS is so want to do. But again, storm surge watch and warnings out. Storm surge watch, Edisto Beach, South Carolina to South Santee River. That's Charleston. North of Duck, North Carolina to the North Carolina-Virginia border, those are your storm surge watches. Storm surge warning, South Santee River to Duck, North Carolina, Albemarle and Pamlico Sounds, including the Neuse and Pamlico Rivers. So those are your storm surge warnings. Yeah, more headlines to come, friends. Hurricane warning is in effect from South Santee River, South Carolina to Duck, North Carolina and the Albemarle and Pamlico Sounds. Hurricane watch remains in effect south of there, Edisto Beach to South Santee River, where there is also now a tropical storm warning. And so there's a tropical storm warning there. That includes the Charleston metro area, Charleston Tri-County area, now under a tropical storm warning. Chesapeake Bay south of New Point Comfort. It's going to be up in Virginia, north of Duck, North Carolina to Cape Charles Light, Virginia. So tropical storm warnings on the periphery, hurricane warnings in the center. We've got, and still there is that potential. We remain under the hurricane watch down here in Charleston. And so that certainly the potential remains for, if this does end up, if the Euro's got something up its sleeve that it knows what it's doing, and it follows that little more southerly jog that it's been advertising, and the ensembles are darn near. I mean, they are almost unanimous on this, which is just chilling, quite frankly. If it does that, now note that the Hurricane Center really hasn't incorporated that into their forecast too much. But if it does, that's going to increase that risk of storm surge here. That's going to increase that risk of heavy flooding rains. We're going to get that combination, like Melissa was talking about, heavy rain and tidal flooding, and we'll have possibly a long duration flooding event. Hope that doesn't happen. Doesn't look like it's going to happen right now, but certainly that we've got to watch down here in the Low Country.
Hey, Jared, as you were talking, I was able to scroll through some of the LSR, this local storm reports, in some of the chats, and you were talking about storm surge. Listen to this, guys. It just came in, so I don't know if you've seen this yet. The North Carolina Department of Highways Ferry Division has reported a storm surge of 10 feet above normal water levels at the Cherry Branch Ferry Terminal in Craven County. So a 10-foot storm surge in Craven County, North Carolina. So that's pretty significant with that storm surge. We've also they were also released some of the peak wind gusts also in Carteret County, Fort Macon, from a weather flow sensor, as Shay was talking about just a little bit ago. 105 mile per hour wind gusts, Cape Lookout, 97 mile per hour wind gust, North River in Carteret County at 75 mile per hour wind gusts. Those are all above hurricane strength. In Dare County, Buxton reporting 73 miles per hour wind gust. Avon, 74 mile per hour wind gust. And then if you look down towards Onslow County, this is in the Sneads Ferry community near North Topsail Island, a 72 mile per hour wind gust. And then the maritime stations, marine stations, Bowie in the New River Inlet. I don't know if you guys saw this. This came in at 8:08 p.m. recorded a 112 mile per hour wind gust in the New River Inlet. So definitely some gusty winds, damaging winds, all these above hurricane force that Florence is producing. And I know we see the sustained winds around 100 miles per hour, but that one wind gust 112 shows you that Florence is capable of producing Category 3 wind gusts as it moves closer to shore, James. And James may not have us. James, do you have us?
I do apologize. Okay. As you may have noticed, I've got two different headphones in, and I'm listening to you on a slight delay as well as live. So I do apologize as we're doing a little bit of multitasking. This is also a good opportunity to remind everyone, as you're watching live tonight on Facebook Live, on YouTube, and on Twitter/Periscope, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, put them in the chat. We would love to see them. We have our panelists looking out for some of those. One of the things we were just talking about behind the scenes scenes here is the impact of this storm in the big picture. So right now, if you happen to be able to watch us from the coast, which you may not if you don't have power, you know that right now this storm is very close to you, with that eye slowly at 5 miles an hour making its way eventually towards the shore here in the next maybe 24 hours or so. But we have a lot of people watching from other parts of the Carolinas, maybe even into Virginia and Georgia and Tennessee, as you got kind of dragged into this extended cone. And, you know, I know that, Scotty, you reported to us the other day that Charlotte shut down their schools. And as far as I know, although I wasn't there today, it was a beautiful sunny day in Charlotte, which I think may have caused some confusion. So what I want to do, and I know our panelists live won't be able to see this, but I'm going to put it up on the screen for our viewers at home, is just show some of the other National Hurricane Center graphics here. You know, you see the cone a lot, that cone of uncertainty. And so that takes all of the different model forecasts, you know, whether it be the Euro or the GFS. And this is done by human beings that you're seeing if you're watching right now live directly on Facebook Live, YouTube, or Periscope. So when you're trying to figure out the biases in those different models, if you are attempting to kind of armchair meteorology here, you can know that this one is vetted by professionals. And so we can kind of get the consensus still that this is going to impact a large swath of the Carolinas. And so what the impact is really going to be as you make your way further inland here, as you make your way towards Columbia, the Midlands, even to upstate South Carolina, Greenville, Spartanburg, and into Charlotte, is that we're going to watch very carefully for the arrival of those tropical storm force winds. And you can see here, because the storm is so large that you may already be seeing some gusts, that these are going to be arriving long ahead of the strongest rain. So even if you do eventually get some of the strongest rain, you're going to be watching for those gusty winds as well too. And because the storm's going to be moving so slowly, our concern is that even if this is a weaker storm, a storm that maybe is a tropical storm, tropical depression, doesn't matter, you're going to have a prolonged heavy rain and wind event, which means you could start to bring down some trees and some branches. And that is what's going to lead to a lot of those widespread power outages. Matter of fact, the National Hurricane Center, one of the many graphics they do put out is the probability of seeing tropical storm force winds. And so you can see that, of course, it is all but certain along the coast, but you can see just how far that extends. Essentially to Interstate 77 has a more than 50% chance of seeing tropical storm force winds at some point during this event. So that is just something to keep in mind as you're watching from the western half of the Carolinas, that you may not be getting a strong hurricane, but Florence is going to come pay a visit. And when she does, you still need to be prepared for some wind and some rain. Matter of fact, the National Hurricane Center also puts out this graphic here that shows you just how much rain they are projecting in coordination with some of their National Weather Service counterparts. I believe the Weather Prediction Center gets involved with this. And again, you can see that as far west as Charlotte, we're talking about a foot of rain is possible during the duration of this event. So I know my home, which has a slight slope in the backyard and tends to kind of flood locally anytime it rains, is probably going to be pooling up a little bit. So that is certainly a concern. Last but not least, here is a look just at that flash flooding probability. Again, all but certain parts of the coast, we're already seeing it. There have been numerous flash flood warnings that were issued already along the coast today. And you can see here kind of that scale. As we get down to the green, a little less likely, but we're still going to be monitoring for flash flooding in low-lying areas along rivers, creeks, and streams as we head through the weekend. Scotty, what's the concern up in the foothills, up in the higher elevations here, as this storm, as this system makes its way towards some of that sloping land?
Yeah, that's a great question, James. And kind of like what Daniel was talking about earlier, it's really track dependent. Wherever this low pressure goes will tell us how much rain we're going to get. The European model, like Jared was talking about just a little bit ago, is kind of taking that more southerly track through South Carolina up into northeast Georgia and then up into Kentucky. If we get that track, we could definitely see some 8 to 12 inch rainfall totals. But the current track that the Hurricane Center is taking right now, we're going to see, in my forecast area, we're forecasting anywhere between 6 to 10 inches of rain. I do believe with some of the model data that's come out and some of the future radars is showing a stripe of rain setting up somewhere on the northern part of Florence. Wherever that sets up at, I believe that the potential of seeing a 10 to maybe 12 inches of rain is very possible. That's right now what radar has been showing. Kind of starts in the Charlotte area and then starts to move up the Interstate 40 corridor and kind of banks up against the mountains. And when we get that, we get what we call orographic lift. We get the rain is actually, it's kind of like ringed out a little bit more. It's kind of like having a sponge and wringing the water out. It gets wrung out just a little bit more because of that lifting the air, and it's creating a little bit more heavier rain against the escarpment of the Blue Ridge Mountains. So McDowell County, Burke County, Caldwell, Rutherford County, down into Henderson County, and then up into the mountains of Avery, Watauga, Ashe, Mitchell. Those places like that, they could definitely see some maybe double-digit rainfall totals. That would create some flash flooding. And James, another worry that is in the western North Carolina area is landslides and mudslides. We had several of those back in May when Tropical Storm Alberto moved through the area. We had over 50 landslides. And so we're just now starting to get roads back open from May. So definitely with another 6, 10, maybe 12 inches of rain, the possibility of seeing more landslides and rock slides and mudslides, things like that, is definitely a possibility. And I know the National Weather Service in Greenville, Spartanburg, they're going to start issuing some verbiage about that. You're going to see these special weather statements come out. I think they're starting those overnight tonight, but definitely starting to push it out tomorrow about the dangers of landslides and the possibility of flash flooding. So rain is a big concern. Definitely gusty winds could produce some downed trees with saturated soils. Numerous places have had a very wet summer. I know Marion, North Carolina, and McDowell County, they're registering their wettest year on record. So with the wet soil, the saturated soil, 25, 35, maybe 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts will definitely be able to bring down some trees onto power lines. So sporadic power outages are definitely a possibility here in the foothills. So kind of a track dependent on just how much rain we get. We know we're going to get rain, and we know it's going to be pretty hefty, but depending on the track tells us if we're going to have double-digit rainfall totals or if we stay in the 6 to maybe 10-inch rainfall totals.
Scotty, I'm going to see, I think we still have Daniel with us, and you talked a little bit about all that rain that's going to be falling across the Carolinas, Scotty, but also flowing down from the mountains, those rivers and streams, making their way eventually through the Midlands and eventually, hopefully, making its way back out to the ocean. Daniel, is that a concern that you guys are going to be watching? Because all that water is going to come pass through you guys at some point.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. And I think Chris mentioned this earlier about with Nichols having having those flood problems with Matthew. So that's the big concern for us, is where obviously that water is going to be coming from north to south, and it is going to make its way through the Midlands. And so that's what we're warning people about, the people that live in those floodplains, the people that live along the rivers, even our lakes, just to pay attention to what's going on. And if local officials tell them to get out, then be ready to move on and move to higher ground, because we saw that in Nichols. Some people hung around, and unfortunately they didn't make it because that water was rising, and they just they stayed around, and it was a little bit too late. So yeah, that's a concern that's one concern we're mentioning as well.
And that makes sense. And like you mentioned, we saw that earlier in the year with all the rain and the flooding we saw coming out of the foothills and other parts of the region. You know, and I don't have all the details in front of me, but I think we were starting to see reports today that the folks who control a lot of those lakes, those dams, those streams, where we do have man-made control on them, are trying to get some of that water flowing out now. So it gives us a little bit extra buffer. Scotty, I understand we have a viewer question. And I believe Scotty is on mute.
I tell you, I've been doing this 5 years and I still catch myself doing that. Great question from Andrew. He's wanting to know about the millibars. If he sees the millibars increase, what does that mean in the storm, and vice versa? What does a decrease in millibars mean in a storm? And Daniel, if you want to take this one, I'll let you do that. And I know Shay, you know, with our tropical expert, maybe you guys want to kind of talk about what that means in the storm.
Does Shay want to go ahead?
Sure, I can do it. Typically what you have is a drop in pressure. The lower the numbers is the lower the pressure, typically the stronger the system is going to be. Whereas when you're rising higher, you're getting up higher in pressure, which we all know what high pressure, we've heard of that. And that's much higher than low pressure. So, I mean, basically the higher pressure, the weaker the storm, lower the pressure, the stronger. That's the general consensus here. We have seen intensities maintain a little higher than what you would think at somewhat low pressures, but yeah. So if we're seeing the millibars rise, that means the storm is beginning to weaken. I did want to quickly mention this was a snapshot that I did earlier. As the storm has weakened today, and there's some questions about why this is happening. Why would the storm weaken? And this shows the topographical features underneath the water that show where the deep Atlantic, where this storm was kicking up 59 to 83 foot swells yesterday along the northeast quadrant. Once all of this water comes up to this Blake escarpment, this is basically the continental edge here, or the shelf waters, the continental shelf for where we are. We have this huge amount of water roll up onto the shelf. And so what you get is a sharp upslope where cool water below upwells to the top. And then it rolls up the Blake Plateau and up to the Florida Hatteras slope. And it basically, the water gets churned up automatically ahead of the storm. Now, we did have right there along the edge of this is where the Gulf Stream is up near North Carolina, right over the Blake Plateau in some portions. And so we did have some convective outbursting. It looked like we might have some intensification, but then we saw rapid cooling. That could be a 1-2 punch. One, trying to get re-intensified. Number two, the cool water upwelling did not allow that to continue. So that may be on the reanalysis, that may be what we saw happen there. But this just gives you an idea of what's going on underneath the water that would cool the sea surface temperatures, which were around 84 to 88 degrees for a lot of folks. Up and down the coastline, mostly around 85 to 86, even 85 in Charleston. But we'll likely see a lot of these waters very cool after this storm is gone and getting back down to where they should be, even below average. So another thing I wanted to show real quick was we do have 3 stations deployed. They are mobile units, and these are SCMP T1, 2, and 3. And these were placed specifically to try to get eyewall data from our weather flow network. So we usually work with some of the universities in Syracuse, Sakura. We work with a lot of folks to try to get more data into the area. So just 3 more weather stations deployed to that area to try to get more information for everybody as the storm rolls on. So hopefully we can get some eyewall information or close to it. Back to you, James.
Hey, James, you were talking about those rainfall totals. The Weather Prediction Center has just brought out their latest projection. So I would like to get that on there because there's a lot of people asking about rain probability. So can you guys see this?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So this is the latest information out from the Weather Prediction Center. This is just kind of a week total of rainfall, but we believe most of this will come during the time that Florence affects the area. Look at some of these rainfall totals down in Wilmington. Now, I'll tell you this. I vacation a lot down in the Holden Beach area, which is in the Wilmington area. And back on August 1st, Wilmington had already reached their climatological average of rainfall. Their average yearly rainfall was reached on August 1st. So since then, we've had some rain. And now look at this. We're adding on another 26 to possibly 30 inches of rain into the Wilmington area. So definitely some catastrophic flooding possible in southeast North Carolina, even down where Chris is at in Myrtle Beach. That's anywhere between 17 to 20 inches of rain possible. Up into, I think this is the Nichols, Florence area, possibility of 17, maybe even 18 inches of rain. Then once you get back towards Columbia, it's between 8 to 10 inches. And then up in the Charlotte metro area, you're looking at a good 10 to 12 inches. There's 13 inches in Concord. Monroe, 14.3 inches over towards Fayetteville, and Lumberton, 20 to 22 inches. And then once you get back into the foothills, Statesville, Hickory, Morganton, right around the 8 to 9 inches, back towards Marion and Rutherford County, 6 to 7 inches. And then the further west, you get Asheville only recording maybe 3.5 inches. And then back into Murphy, North Carolina, you're only looking at it between 1.5 inches to 2 inches. So this is the latest rainfall estimate from the Weather Prediction Center, and I think it comes out at least 2 to 3 times a day. So we could definitely see these numbers change, depending on the track. But at least tonight at around 10 o'clock. This is the latest thinking and rainfall totals from the Weather Prediction Center, who kind of blends all this model data together to come up with this forecast. So those are definitely some eye-opening rainfall totals there in northeast South Carolina and southeast North Carolina.
Also, special shout out to Kenneth Hudnut in our chat here. He's with USGS. He sent us a really great link for landslide info source. So we're going to have to do our little homework on that to get brushed up on that product. But thank you very much, Ken. Thanks for watching. He's been on our show before to talk about volcanic activity and earthquake activity. So thank you very much. Anyways, just wanted to mention him.
I've got one last question for Melissa, and I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but given your profession and your studies, do you have an anticipation of, in the history books, where Florence might fall compared to the storms we've previously seen in the region?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I'm just trying to think. I mean, you know, Daniel mentioned earlier, you know, everyone's been, you know, using Hugo has been mentioned. I mean, you go in the grocery store around here, you hear people mention Hugo. It's one for the books. And even before Hugo, I've heard mention of Gracie. I've heard mention of Hazel. You know, I just honestly, right now, I don't know. I don't know where this is going to end up, but I can say that it is definitely going to be one that people are going to be talking about for the next 30 years.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot to be seen in this forecast and how it plays out, but I think it's a name that people are going to certainly remember. Scotty, I think you had some power outages we wanted to share before we wrap up tonight, and I know a lot of those right now are along the coast, and we're going to wait to see what happens to those folks watching in central North Carolina and South Carolina, as well as the western half. But what's it looking like right now at the coast?
Yes, I do want to. Carolyn Elizabeth is wanting to know, Daniel specifically, what is the tornado threat for the Midlands? She says she watches you there on TV. I was wanting to know what the tornado threat was there and why he explains that. I'm going to pull up the power outages.
Yeah, we've been going with an isolated threat for the Midlands, and it's going to be very track dependent. If the track at the center of the track, or I should say the center of circulation is more towards our northern portion of the Midlands, then the threat for tornadoes will be further to our north. If the center of circulation is further south, then we may have more activity. But right now we were saying kind of an isolated chance for tornadic activity. And unfortunately, when you get these tropical storm type tornadoes, they're kind of short-lived. And a lot of times by the time you get the warning and maybe hop on television, it's gone a lot of times. So that can be good and bad, but it looks like the risk is going to be isolated right now. Of course, we're going to be watching it closely, especially as we go into Saturday, in particular for us here in the Columbia area.
Yeah, I've been watching level 3 radar the last time for Matthew, and this one I don't even bother because there's so many little mesocyclones that occur that you get lost in them. You don't know which one. They're all radar indicated rotations, and it's just a matter of which one is actually showing touching down. So I know the Weather Service stays really busy with that.
All right, pulled up the power outage map. As you can see, over 118,000 state outages right now in North Carolina. This was as of 9:37. I'll refresh it here, see if we can get an update. So there's the latest update, 9:51, 123,659 power outages in North Carolina, and most of those being in eastern North Carolina. The two most affected counties is Carteret County. As you can see, 98% of the county is without power right now. And then looking at this is Pamlico County. 97% of the county is out of power there. So those are definitely some major outage numbers. Here's Craven County. About 64% of the county is out of power. So we can go down to South Carolina here, if you'll bear with me for just a second. And we'll pull South Carolina up. Right now, only 595 outages in South Carolina, and most of those look to be in Georgetown County, with 349 of those customers without power. So again, North Carolina experiencing the majority of the power outages right now. Carteret County and Pamlico County are the two most hard hit counties, and Craven County as well. So A lot of folks, that's kind of the Morehead City, New Bern area that we've been seeing a lot of the storm reports out of, James. So those power outages are starting to creep up, especially in North Carolina, eastern North Carolina.
Oh, yeah, thanks for that, Scotty. And we'll watch to see how far that impact makes it into the central part and the western part of the state. We hope it doesn't travel that far in, but like we talked about before, when you're dealing with a hurricane or even just a simple prolonged tropical system like this, that's going to bring lots of rain and wind, we're going to see how much the trees can tolerate before they start coming down. I was just using the radar scope app here on my phone and measuring at this hour where the eye is. And although we do not know at this point how the storm may still wobble in its last few hours at sea, it's about 70 miles off the coast of Wilmington, and the storm is moving west at about 5 miles an hour. So that's not to say that the eye itself will come ashore in Wilmington, but as you can see, we'll go ahead and put the radar up on the screen. That eye is on radar. We can see it. It is just off the coast. The rains have been battering eastern North Carolina all day today. And for those of you along the coast, I hate to tell you, but the heaviest winds are still on their way as this eye gets closer and closer to shore. So you are certainly in for a long night. Our thoughts are with you, and we hope that you are watching from a safe, evacuated place or someplace hunkered down, safe and sound. Scotty, I think now just past the 10 o'clock hour here, maybe we'll look to start wrapping things up and take one last look at the National Hurricane Center's latest forecast track. For that, I'll send it back to you.
All right, we've got one more question. Tom is wanting to know if Chris could give us an update about what's actually going on in Myrtle Beach since he's there in the storm. And I know before, maybe Tom, you wasn't joining us at the beginning of the show, but we had Chris kind of give a synopsis of what he had already seen and what was going on there. So, Chris, for maybe those who have just joined, kind of give us a rundown of what's going on right now, where you're at weather-wise, and maybe what to expect over the next 24 hours.
So I've been in Myrtle Beach all afternoon. The storm's if it's moving, it's not moving much. I set up in North Myrtle Beach earlier today, and sitting on the beach right in North Myrtle Beach. I'm actually going to share my screen here. I'm going to show you guys a few things. Get this pulled up here. All right. I was sitting on the beach earlier in North Myrtle Beach, and with radar scope, it gives you the great ability to GPS locate yourself, and then from there use their measurement tools. But just using this, you get a brief idea. Right now to the center of the eye of Florence from North Myrtle Beach is about 101 miles. Earlier today at about 3 o'clock, it was only 138 miles. So it's not moving fast. I mean, it's just creeping along. This outer band right here has just been pounding Wilmington and Oak Island all day long. Earlier, there was a few little squalls that moved into the North Myrtle Beach area. And, there was a little bit of rain, but it was in and out in, 5 to 10 minutes. But, my biggest thing that I'm watching, looking at the radar here is just, watching what this eye does. And over the past few hours, it hasn't done a lot because it's really going to dictate what I see, here in Myrtle Beach, or if I go back up to North Myrtle Beach in the morning. If it comes onshore, due west, I'm going to be really concerned, as the storm passes, getting the winds that switch around out of the south and storm surge becomes an issue. Something else that I've been watching all day is this dry slot right on the backside of the storm right here. I don't know if that's dry air trying to get entrained into it. It's just something I've been watching. But, for right now, winds are, 20-ish, 20, 25, gusting 30, 35 at times. And, just going to keep monitoring it, see what happens when I wake up in the morning. I'm planning on trying to get up kind of early and from there see where the storm's at, see how it's progressing, and try to put myself in the safest and maybe the best position I possibly can for tomorrow.
And Chris, I was going to ask you that question. What is it going to be like for you tonight? Because I know all meteorologists, when we see big events coming, we say we're going to sleep, but we don't really get a lot of sleep. Are you going to be out looking out the window every hour or so, or what's that going to be like?
No, I want this nice bed here. What I'm concerned about, maybe Shay or somebody else that's actually looked at some of the, I guess, the high resolution model stuff, and maybe Melissa, I don't know. high tide for Myrtle Beach and Spring Bay Pier is supposed to be at noon tomorrow. And if this storm, starts moving a little bit, that's about 14 hours away. You got I think it's projected at 5.93 feet, and then you can throw maybe 4 to 6 feet of water back on top of it. I just don't know what the tide cycle is going to be like with the storm motion. Maybe that's something you guys have looked at today and can give me some insight on.
Yeah, I got it up on screen right now. This is the ET surge for Springmaid Pier. This is a little south of you. There isn't much data just north of you until you get up past the Cape up there. But we're looking at negative storm surge for tomorrow in Myrtle Beach. In fact, looking at over almost 2 feet, a little over 2 feet below high tide with offshore winds. So if the high resolution model in NAM3, I can run the NAM3, and we can see this right here. The NAM3 is really, it's taking it into the coast right here. We're getting a landfall out of it. Then hugging the coast, coming down towards your way, towards North Myrtle, Cherry Grove area, Sunset, and then scooting off to the west, wobbling very slowly off to the west. So that's what the NAM3 is showing right there. If we get the Euro run, of course, that will change. But I don't think your storm surge, even if the Euro does bring it down the coastline, is going to deviate a lot, because I think that wraparound flow is going to keep more of a negative surge going on than anything else. And it would have to be considerably off the coast to get you an onshore flow to occur to give you a surge. So I don't think surge is going to be too much of a big deal up that way. I think you'll be getting negative surge, if anything. But you're looking far below hat values as of right now with the ET. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit.
Absolutely. That what that allowed me to do is maybe stay on the beach a little bit longer, not be so concerned about storm surge, especially as long as that offshore wind continues. Because I know tomorrow, especially tomorrow afternoon, it's going to be a different ball game than it was here today. Here today, it was basically a nice sunny summer afternoon by myself in Myrtle Beach. Tomorrow it's going to be a nice stormy afternoon with Florence in Myrtle Beach.
Well, don't climb the Ferris wheel to get your bird's eye view, okay?
There's no gondolas. I drove by it earlier.
Well, Chris, we definitely wish you a good night's rest, and definitely stay safe tomorrow. I know if you're watching us tonight, we're going to be able to roll a lot of Chris's footage tomorrow and push a lot of his information out. So with that, James, I'm going to send it to you, and we can kind of close down tonight's show.
Yeah, thanks, Scotty. And we do want to remind everyone that our YouTube stream will remain up. We're going to continue to bring you some of the latest content throughout the night. And then if you are more interested in Facebook, we will be back live on Facebook each time we've got a major event. So whether that's a live nightly show like we're doing right now, or when we have live news conferences or updates, either from state governors or local city or county officials, as you have seen, we've been bringing those to you on Facebook Live as well, too. The other thing I've been mentioning all week long at the end of the shows, and I'm going to do so right now too, is a lot of us are going to get into situations where you lose power, you have limited internet, the cellular network is limited. If you're still looking to keep up to date with the Carolina Weather Group, what you can do is follow us on your favorite podcast app. So if that's Google Play, if that's Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, you can subscribe to the Carolina Weather Group and listen to us audio only. So when we're done here with this show in a few moments, we're going to take the audio from tonight. We're going to go ahead and push it out on those platforms. So although it's good, obviously, anytime for on-the-go listening, it's going to be really key here in this kind of emergency situation. If you're looking to stay up to date, you can do so that way. And of course, we also hope that you have some sort of battery-operated or hand-cranked AM, FM weather radio, so you can get the latest local information from your neck of the woods too, because we're going to try to give you as much information as we can. But obviously, it's a very large storm in a very large area, and we want you to get that local information. So if there is storm surge, localized flooding, one of those tornado warnings that we've talked about, we want to make sure that you can get that directly. And so in a situation like this, a battery operated or hand cranked radio that has that NOAA weather band is going to be very, very important. I want to thank our guest for hopping on tonight. I know we weren't able to get Dr. Greg Postel on from the Weather Channel due to some technical issues, but hopefully we'll have him on sometime in the future. I know he's also very busy. I want to thank Daniel and Melissa for joining us tonight. I know their time is very valuable, and they're right here in the Carolinas like the rest of us, and so everyone is kind of looking at this not only from a professional standpoint, but also from a personal standpoint. Everyone's got friends, families, and livelihoods that they're looking out for here as well too. So Chris, did you have something from Brad Penovich that he posted on social that you wanted to share real fast before we sign off tonight?
Yeah, it was just something he just put out, one of his graphics. I thought that was pretty telling for Brad, because he usually tells it like it is. Got a ton of respect for him. Awesome. He's got a brand new graphic on his Facebook page. From Charlotte down to Marion, down across the PD River Valley, the lumber watershed, Lumberton, North Carolina, Robinson County, all the way down to Williams. Oh God, goodness gracious, Wilmington, and then over to Myrtle Beach. And he's got an extreme risk for flooding. So that's pretty telling.
Yeah, I think by the time this is all said and done, it's something that is going to touch every corner of the Carolinas. So do stay prepared. And you've probably heard it so many times before, but no one ever complained about being over prepared. So whether you use all of those Pop-Tarts now or you use them down the line, they're not going bad. So enjoy those brown sugar cinnamon Pop-Tarts. With that, Scotty, I'll wrap this on up here, I think, for tonight. This has been our September 13th, 2018 special past the 10 o'clock hour. Now it's our Thursday night Hurricane Florence special. We've been live with you each and every night at 9 o'clock. And so, again, follow us here on social media, and we will continue to provide you coverage of what very well may be a historic storm. Scotty?
Thank you for that, James. It is definitely our thoughts and prayers with all those who are already being affected and those who are in the path. We hope that everything goes well. I know it's been kind of sad for me because I lived in Myrtle Beach for a couple of summers, and I visit Topsail Island and Holden Beach every year, and so many memories there. And to see those places like that get pummeled by Florence is kind of it's kind of sad to me. So my thoughts are with everyone and all of us here. We will continue to keep you updated. Make sure you're following us on social media as well, and we'll continue to do our live stream updates tomorrow and through I guess until the threat's over. So we hope you don't get too tired of us. We've been on your screen every night, so don't get too. We hope you're not getting too tired of us. But again, thanks to all the guys here. I want to thank Jared and James definitely for all the 24-hour live streaming coverage and all the tricks that they're able to do. I have no idea what they do, but with the technology, but very thankful for those folks. Thankful for Chris and Shay and what they bring to the show and their dedication, and just a big thank you from me. And we'll keep you in the loop. And Daniel and Melissa, we wish you guys the best, and whatever this weekend may bring. We hopefully it won't be too bad, and we can start to enjoy some college football, right, Daniel?
Oh yeah.
All right, you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you back here tomorrow night for another episode of the Carolina Weather Group. Stay safe out there, and make sure that you check on your friends and neighbors. Have a great night.